Have you ever heard of the Guinness World Records? Probably, right? Now, how about Guinness beer? Nope, it's not an ad. It's all connected. When the boss of the brewery, Hugh Beaver, messed up on a hunt, claiming his prey was, in fact, European golden plover, aka the fastest bird in Europe, other hunters weren't buying it. That's when Beaver decided to create a guidebook of bizarre records. Now, in the pages of that book, thousands of names are listed, folks who hit the big time on Earth. But their journey to the top often took unexpected turns, sometimes so much that the record breakers couldn't even figure out if they reached their goal. So, viewer discretion is advised. Now, why does the quest for the top often turn into a game with death? At 17, young Haris Suleiman already had a pilot's license. He started flying at 8 with his dad, Babar, a Pakistani immigrant. In the summer of 2014, they decided to chase both dreams, raising funds for schools in Pakistan and flying around the globe. The Suleimans planned not just a flight, but a world record, covering almost 43,000 kilometers in 30 days, with 25 stops in 15 countries. This journey aimed to be the fastest solo flight around the world on a single-engine plane, with Haris becoming the youngest pilot to achieve it. Babar mapped the route to ensure the plane would be near major shipping lanes in case of an emergency. They even took survival courses and practiced water crash scenarios. On June 19, 2014, they finally took off from Indiana, made several stops, and landed in Babar's homeland, Pakistan, where they were hailed as national heroes, showered with flowers and cameras clicking. However, the Suleimans continued their journey through Indonesia, Australia, and Oceania. Ahead of them, just 2 days of flying and 3 stops before returning to Indiana. Their family gathered, anticipating the celebration of 2 world records set by father and son. Meanwhile, after all necessary checks, the Suleimans took off from Pago Pago shortly before 10 p.m. to reach Hawaii in daylight. Airport workers watched as the plane suddenly turned and plunged into the ocean. The Coast Guard started a search operation, hoping the Suleimans' training would help them survive the crash. But by noon the next day, rescuers found only small debris and Haris's body. The plane's fuselage and Babar's remains were never located. So, the final moments of the pilots' lives remain unknown, just like the cause of the deadly crash. Yet the Suleimans' family takes pride in them, as they aim to help people pursue their dreams. Still, this path often leads record breakers to a tragic end. An American guy, Alex Harville, has been into motorcycles since he was a kid. He thought those dirt bikes were heroes. Over time, he turned his passion into a real gig. Alex became a pro stuntman and, in 2013, set his first world record, jumping a motorcycle dirt to dirt. But that was just one of 2 possible feats. Jumping from a ramp to the ground was the other goal. The problem was that an Australian biker named Robbie Madison already held the spot with a record of 107 meters. So, Harville got serious about training to kick Madison off the pedestal on June 17, 2021, at the Moses Lake Air Show. The jump Alex planned was about 110 meters, equivalent to the length of an American football field. Harville did his final practice before attempting the record-breaking jump and revved up for the leap. The stuntman went airborne as usual, but this time crashed into the ramp and got tossed off the bike. Medics rushed to Alex in less than 3 minutes. Apparently, the impact was so intense it even ripped off his helmet. Unfortunately, he died on the way to the hospital, but still managed to secure a spot in the Guinness Book one more time. After Alex's tragic death, his mom gathered evidence that her son actually beat Madison's record back in May 2012. The committee officially confirmed his record-breaking over 129-meter jump from a ramp to the ground. So, even in death, Alex Harville clinched the distance record. But the battle for speed can be just as intense and dangerous. No one knew this better than Jessie Combs, a metal fabricator, TV host, racer, and the fastest woman on 4 wheels. In 2013, she set her first speed record, and 3 years later, she broke it herself. But that wasn't the endgame. The absolute land speed record among women belonged to Kitty O'Neill. In 1976, in the Alvord Desert, she hit over 825 kilometers per hour, earning the title of the fastest woman in the world. And Jessie Combs aimed to beat that record. For that, she had to hop behind the wheel of a jet-powered car. So on August 27, 2019, Combs and her crew gathered in the same desert where O'Neill set her record. Yet Jessie wasn't just aiming to go a bit faster. She wanted to hit a mind-blowing speed of 1,300 kilometers per hour, surpassing even the speed of sound. On the morning of the historic run, when the alarm clock read, "Let's make history," everyone was excited, yet inspired. And when the time for takeoff arrived, all eyes were on Jessie as she hit the gas. She sped up, leaving a thick trail of dust, when suddenly the car jumped in the air and crashed. Rescuers rushed to the crash site, but when they got there, the car was engulfed in flames and Jessie was still behind the wheel. She didn't make it. Further investigation revealed that the front wheel of her car hit an object in the desert, and at a speed of around 842 kilometers per hour, it turned out to be a deadly problem. Despite the horrific tragedy, it was also a new world record. A year after Combs' death, Guinness World Records officially confirmed Jessie's achievement. Just a few days before the tragic accident, she wrote that many people thought she was crazy. Maybe it's tough for you to understand Combs' passion for speed. Nevertheless, she knew she was walking the line of fire because she wanted to achieve great results and show people around the world that they could do it too. But the desire to set a record can consume a person so much that it becomes the literal purpose of their life. Like what happened with John Cobb, who aimed to break the world water speed record. Cobb was a wealthy English broker, so he could afford to splash big money on his hobby, and that's exactly what he did. He got a cutting-edge car of the time and broke the land speed record in 1938, then surpassed his own results twice. After that, Cobb decided to hit the water and become the first in history to reach a record-breaking 200 miles per hour. Achieving such speed is incredibly challenging. Unlike land tracks, the water surface is constantly changing, and every wave could potentially lead to the same ending as the object that got under Jessie Combs' car in the desert. However, John Cobb was serious about it and commissioned developing and constructing an unprecedented high-speed boat. It was supposed to work on a jet engine, a recently emerged technology. John Cobb spent almost 45,000 pounds on research, design, and construction, equivalent to about 1.5 million today. Finally, Crusader was created, a boat made of wood and birch plywood that could theoretically reach a speed of 402 kilometers per hour. At the end of August 1952, Cobb's team got the green light for a speed run on Loch Ness. First, other racers tested the boat, and a few days later, John Cobb himself took the wheel. It was the first time he found himself in the cockpit of a boat he had paid crazy money for. Moreover, it was the first time he piloted something faster than an ordinary speedboat. Training went well, and Cobb had already crossed the 100-mile-per-hour mark. Still, he aimed for 200, even though the world record at that time was quite far from that. Despite successful training, there were a few boat problems. The team insisted on getting Crusader out of the water, but Cobb wanted to make one last run. It was September 29th, which turned out to be a tragic day, because the boat suffered a sudden accident, and John Cobb died on the spot. He crashed at a speed of almost 207 miles per hour, even more than his goal. However, they couldn't count this as a record due to the lack of a repeat run, as required by the Guinness World Record rules. And although John Cobb met his death in the water, others found their passion in it. Frenchwoman Audrey Mest had been swimming for 2 years and became a scuba diver at 13. She escaped to the water when she had back problems and later studied marine biology. So, when she met record-setting freediver Francisco Pepin Ferreras, she instantly fell in love. Therefore, it's no surprise that in 2002, after training with Pepin, Mest aimed to break the world freediving record. It's a challenging and dangerous form of underwater diving without oxygen tanks, just holding your breath. Freedivers descend at least to the depth of a 40-story building over 122 meters. There, they face intense pressure, slowing their pulse to 14 beats per minute, compressing their lungs, and redirecting blood from limbs to the heart and brain. Despite the complexity and danger, there are only about 5,000 freedivers worldwide, with hundreds dying each year. Nonetheless, Audrey Mest planned to dive to 171 meters to beat the previous world record set by Tanya Streeter just a few weeks earlier. So, guided by her husband, Pepin, Audrey started training, and on October 12th, she was ready for the first attempt at the record dive. Audrey grabbed a special winch attached to a cable, took a deep breath, and began descending. 2 observer divers accompanied her at different stages. Audrey successfully reached the desired depth, recorded the data, and pulled the lever to inflate a special lift bag. But it didn't work. One of the divers rushed to Mesty, connected his own buoyancy device, and partially inflated the lift bag. Yet the ascent was too slow, and Audrey was losing consciousness. The first diver handed over Audrey to the second observer, and on their way up, Pepin joined them underwater. However, instead of 3 minutes, Mesty spent over 8.5 underwater, which was critical for her body. When they brought the unconscious woman to the surface, she still had a pulse, but it turned out there was no doctor nearby. Audrey Mesty's death was confirmed at the local hospital, and accusations rained down on her widower. Some thought Pepin killed his wife because he didn't want her to outshine him. However, the investigation revealed a series of factors leading to the tragedy, such as bad weather, cable displacement, and malfunctions in the descent and lift mechanism. Audrey Mesty chose water as her element and eventually entered the Woman Divers Hall of Fame posthumously. Well, diving can happen not only in the sea, but also in the air. Though technically, you can name it falling. German Diana Paris would call it skydiving. At the age of 46, the X-ray assistant had already made over 1,500 parachute jumps. Finally, she could be part of a world record. Alongside 221 skydivers from 28 countries, Paris arrived in the town of Eloy, Arizona. This team planned to break the world record for the number of people performing 2 aerial formations before opening their parachutes. Skydivers had trained for 18 months, and on April 3, 2014, they were ready for the first attempt. They wore colorful jumpsuits and took their places in 10 airplanes. When the planes reached an altitude of about 6,000 meters, it was time to jump. Now, each skydiver had only 80 seconds to position themselves in a complex formation, regroup, and open the parachute. The weather was excellent, and there were no signs of trouble, but it happened. Diana Paris's husband watched from the ground as 222 skydivers fell at a speed of 190 kilometers per hour, formed a snowflake in the sky, and finally scattered in different directions, opening their parachutes. However, one person continued to rapidly descend without a life-saving canopy, and eventually fell. Soon, the man figured out it was Diana. It turned out her main parachute malfunctioned, and the reserve simply didn't have time to open. Despite the tragedy, Diana's grieving husband acknowledged that she knowingly took a deadly risk to fulfill her dream. However, sometimes seemingly innocent ventures can turn into disasters. In Cleveland in 1986, the local charity organization had a brilliant idea to organize a festival and set a world record for the simultaneous launch of the largest number of balloons. Very ambitious, right? In reality, though, it was supposed to be a spectacular publicity stunt to raise funds. So, about 2,500 volunteers gathered on Public Square in Cleveland, tirelessly inflating balloons with helium for several days. They literally rubbed their hands to blood, but were excited about their task. As a result, a gigantic net the size of a city block and 3 stories high held about 1.5 million balloons. Although they planned to inflate even more, the organizers had to start the festival earlier because a storm was quickly approaching the city. So on September 27th at 1:50 p.m., a historic event unfolded. 1.5 million balloons simultaneously soared into the sky, first enveloping a 52-story skyscraper, and then creating a massive amount of trouble. The organizers thought the balloons would stay in the air until they deflated, but they encountered a cold front and rain, causing them to fall to the ground, still inflated. This led to at least 10 accidents as drivers tried to navigate unexpected obstacles, or simply gawked at a colorful cloud around them. The local airport even had to close because lifting planes into the air became impossible. Additionally, the balloons landed in a paddock where a local resident bred Arabian horses. Several animals were severely frightened and suffered irreversible injuries, as stated in a $100,000 compensation lawsuit filed by the horse owner against the festival organizing company. Yet the majority of the balloons turned into litter in rivers and lakes across half of Ohio, and even in Canada. However, the most horrifying part was that the balloons likely caused the death of 2 fishermen. The men had disappeared the day before, and the Coast Guard went in search of them. But amidst the multicolored balloons, they simply couldn't spot the boat, the fishermen's life jackets, or their bodies. Eventually, both men were found dead. The widow of one of them also filed a lawsuit against the festival organizing company. What was planned as a fundraiser event ended up causing colossal losses and chaos. Unfortunately, record setting often takes an unexpected turn, especially if it's something unusual, like hair ziplining. For the record-breaking distance covered on his own hair, Indian Shailendra Nath first entered the Guinness World Records. Later, the man managed to move a 40-ton train, also using his hair. The enthusiasm of the 48-year-old Shailendra might seem strange, but like other record holders, he aimed to be the best of the best. On the other hand, his wife wasn't thrilled with her husband's risky hobby, so eventually, Nath promised to perform his last stunt. On April 28, 2013, the Indian decided to break his own record for the longest hair zipline. For this, he stretched a rope 180 meters above the Teesta River. A crowd gathered on the nearby bridge to witness the new world record being broken. Although Nath wore a life jacket, just in case he fell into the water, there were no medics or rescuers nearby because the man didn't have official permission to perform the risky stunt. Yet that didn't stop Nath. He hooked his hair onto the rope and began his journey with a spectacular flight. Further on, the man assisted himself with his hands to move along the rope. However, when he covered about half the distance, something went wrong. Shailendra suddenly stopped, started gasping, and signaled frantically in a way that made no sense to anyone. This went on for almost half an hour, during which Nath didn't budge, and eventually he froze completely. No one came to his aid because no one understood what was happening. Finally, when the man didn't snap out of it, the police finally removed him from the rope. It turned out that precisely at the moment when Shailendra attempted his record, he suffered a heart attack. Perhaps they could have saved him if he had received help immediately. However, that didn't happen, and as he promised his wife, it turned out to be his last hair zipline. It seems that the relentless desire to be the holder of a world record always comes at the cost of human lives. In 2012, a 24-year-old guy from Sri Lanka wanted to set a record for the longest live burial. During the previous attempt, he lasted 6 hours. So, the next time, the guy's Sri Lankan friends waited for him half an hour longer before starting to dig him out. But when they finally got the guy out from underground, he turned out to be dead. So, if you ever want to break some world record, remember that you might end up making history not as you planned. And what's the craziest thing you've dared to do to fulfill a dream? Share your stories in the comments.